let's talk. As Peter mentions the tools, I'm gonna come for the head deal, and I'm gonna ask about a certain player because I'm a little bit confused why this player could potentially slide, given he was in the youth All Australian squad where they play against a couple games against VFL teams, and I'm talking about Harry O'Farrell being in the best 22 in Australia, and he's potentially going to slide to a pick in the 30s or the 40s. What are we saying?
Yeah, he's definitely, probably like in some ways for Harry O'Farrell, like he's a bit of a victim of the deep draft. He was in that academy team for sure. I guess given that he's a key position defender, it's a little bit perhaps easier to get into, particularly in this draft that's very midfield dominant. So it's a little bit easier to maybe get in, but he is definitely a high pedigree player, someone that has a lot of athleticism. He stands around 196 and he runs really well. He moves really well. His defensive one-on-one stuff is really good. And he has, particularly at school footy level, like at APS level, he has played forward and kicked quite a lot of goals throughout the season. So if he's someone that kind of slid through, I think Collingwood would be mad not to pick him up given his talent level. It just comes, I think for Collingwood with that type of player, it's going to come down to how much they want to bed them in for the 2025 season, I suppose. Like how much do they want them to hit the ground running and actually help the team straight away, or how much do they want to just develop them?
Yeah, it's a good question because I feel like if there was ever a time to bring in a key-sized youthful forward or key-sized defender to Collingwood, it's probably now. Not because there's an opportunity in the immediate future, but because there's an opportunity to be under the tutelage of some really experienced key tall veterans. I mean, if you got Brody Myercheck to look up to, you've got Tim Membry to look up to, Dan McStay to look up to, all on the forward line, and then you've got on the other side Darcy Moore, Jeremy Howe, and so on and so forth. I feel like it's a great time to go to Collingwood as a younger player, just in general. Like, yes, we do have one of if not the oldest list, but I feel like what mainstream media won't paint is the fact that you're probably going to get more wisdom being at a club like Collingwood with an older age group.
I can vouch 100% for what you're saying because, that's been the problem with my club for so many years. Like we've drafted all these high-end talents, but if you don't have the right development, and again, we talk about the football departments of these clubs, like they don't have endless resources to work with players. You look at a team like Hawthorn, and I don't know if you've listened to many press conferences that Sam Mitchell's done, and he's talked about how Hawthorn have kind of gone into the drafts with this strategy to recruit players that have a lot of self-motivation to actually develop themselves, and so that the club doesn't have to put that extra resource into it, that extra money into it. So for Collingwood in the situation that they are having those experienced players, and Geelong are another good example of that too with the older players, they've always been able to bring in, it makes their recruiting in some ways look better because they have those players and the players come on faster because of it.
Yeah. It's either that or, like you said, if Sam Mitchell was hinting he wants the players he's bringing in to be self-motivated, he's probably implying that he'd like these players to have a desire to bring on a trainer that they pay for outside of what they're committed to at their AFL club. Is that right?
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So basically players that the club doesn't have to worry about when it comes to all of those extra things to become the best possible athlete that they can. If they think that they can do that and spend their own money on it, then the club's not going to have to do that. And they're pretty much working in some ways outside the cap.
Yep, for sure. And bringing us back to even more to Harry O'Farrell, was he injured at some point that sort of scared scouts away as well?
Yeah, he was. I've got to think back on the period. I think he came back later on in the season. He might not. Yeah, it was late. It was late in the season. So I don't know. I feel like if you miss that Coates Talent League final series, and the national championships and those kind of big moments, you're going to slide pretty much. We've seen that with Taj Houghton. He was playing unbelievable football before he did his knee. And if you don't get to be in those big moments, you're pretty much clubs don't have the data on you and you're not going to, you're going to come up as too much of a risk. So I think that is why he has slid. I do think there is, if you start to look at the tools that come into this draft around the high teens, go through to like the top 30, like there's a lot. And when you put those other guys that have played like more consistent footy throughout the whole year and they haven't been injured, like it's kind of no surprise that he slid. Like the other one that's a little bit like that is Noah Mraz, because he was injured as well. And he was talked about as like a top 10, even like really early, like top 10 and then sort of top 20 prospect. And he's kind of dropped out towards like that 35 mark too. So, and then players like Jerine from WA, like the Whitlock brothers, they've kind of continued their trajectory. You've had players like Jonty Fall come in that are also key forwards. So yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's a deep draft. So those kind of players that don't have the runs on the board are likely to fall. And I guess for a team like Collingwood, who have got a couple of second round picks, like a third round pick, then it's swoop on it.